All right, everyone, we should be live. Let's make sure that's actually the case. I think I know why Rumble didn't work the other day. They have made an update actually to their live streaming module, and so I'm assuming that's probably why the other day I was having problems with loading things. Again, the exclusive video never loaded. I didn't do one today. I said fuck, and I couldn't actually get the live stream working. So we'll make sure that I'm actually live over there. Chat is working. Kim2425, yay! Cold St. Patty's morning, Clankdom. Here it is wonderful. It is 60 degrees, sunny, only a gentle breeze. It is literally perfect. Spring is in the air. Now, spring has sprung here in the Netherlands. CLK, top of the morning, Clankers. Kiss the Blarney Stone. No shenanigans for you. Nebraska Girl 71, happy Clank, happy St. Patty's Day. And just tell us, we love the Hex and Hammers in Lincoln 10, North Carolina. Sorry. All right, let's make sure that we're actually live on here. Yes, indeed. And yeah, Rumble has introduced something. You can check it off when you're live streaming. It's for lower latency or something. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm streaming there anyway. And I do see that a bunch of people are piling in. So things are working. Thank goodness. Mopey Hornet, what happened to the monkeypox? It got eradicated as a certain month ended. People stopped going to as many orgies, and then that was the end of it. Yes, it is St. Patty's Day. I've decided, by the way, update, I am not going to be making a boiled dinner tonight like I originally planned with cabbage and ham and shit. I'm going to be making a cottage pie. And my mom, actually, our first topic is actually something she wanted me to address. She's probably watching right now. So, hi, Mom, if you're out there. I don't know if she joins right when the live stream begins or if it's later, but she'll see it anyway. And she wanted me to talk about, is debate dead? I would say this, though, as an aside. My cottage pie is similar to your shepherd's pie. My mom always made this, like when I was a kid. I would have eaten it every night with ketchup, of course, because I'm crazy. And it's a mashed potato on the top, and there are a million ways you can make it. A vegetable in the middle. We typically had it with sweet corn, and then burger or some other meat on the bottom. Now, there are 1,000 different variants of this. I have my own. Mine uses, instead of the corn, I use a mix of peas and carrots usually. And I really heavily season the meat, whereas in the New England style, it's the meat is less seasoned, and the corn gives it sort of a flavor. So it's sort of like the same concept as corned beef, I guess, in a way. Anyway, I'll be making that tonight. And yes, I understand to Riceeks, cottage pie is beef, shepherd's pie is lamb. Yes, but in New England, the two are effectively interchangeable. King of Biltong, good morning from Antons in Roanoke, Texas. Hashtag Clank Nation. Yes, when I end up back in the United States, I am going to cook my version of cottage pie for my parents and anyone else that wants some. I have a feeling that it'll be a crowd pleaser. Jeffrey Durham, good morning, Sticks and Friends. Going to do the brakes on my car this weekend. Got to buy equipment and parts today. Thanks for your live streams to have on in the background. Clank, here's $20 just because. Much love from LA, California. Yeah, depending on which neighborhood you're in. Either congrats on being in a sunny area, nice and warm, or I'm sorry that you hear a random shooting at night. Cam2425, yay, over on Rumble. Happy birthday to me. Clank, to you. Happy birthday, Cam. Your birthday is St. Patty's Day. Interesting. The Grizzly. I was smart and celebrated with my friends at the local barcade on Wednesday, so we could all avoid the drunken downtown celebration. Yeah, a lot of Guinness drinking. I'm imagining today, especially in Boston, where you don't want to wear a bunch of red clothes at the moment. Here, nobody gives a damn because St. Patty's Day is a holiday here. But it's not really like nobody's dressing all in green. I didn't see any leprechauns around or anything. Now, we're going to get to the first point here. This is not a news story. It's something that my mom wanted me to talk about. So I'm going to be giving my opinions. She asked, is debate dead? That is that the concept of a normal debate where people are they're holding discourse with each other as opposed to simply shouting over each other, etc., is that dead? I would say yes and no. In the sense of politics post-Trump specifically, in the normal concourse in public, yeah, debate is effectively dead. In the social media era especially, this has become a thing. There is no attempt at conversing with others intelligently because most people are in echo chambers. They can't be dissuaded. But that's never been the point of debate. The point of debate is not to convince the person that you're debating. It never has been. It never will be. It's not to convince them of the veracity of your points. Your odds of that are virtually non-existent. They wouldn't be debating you at all if they didn't have an axe to grind, if they didn't have deeply held beliefs. The point of a debate is to swing those that are watching the debate, whether that's digital, in person, like a stump speech sort of thing. That's always been the purpose of debate. It's basically a performance art when you think about it. It's sort of like a gladiatorial combat, only with words instead of with swords. In that sense, debate's not dead because it resembles exactly what it has been since the get-go. You can find quotes from ancient philosophers where they are saying the most insane things to one another or about one another outside of the debate circuit over time. Actually, it's funny. I see a lot of people saying, well, the conversation has been lowered by the internet era. No, it hasn't. If anything, it's just more people are participating. It seems more brusque, more forceful, because more people are having those debates. But it has never been the point to attempt to convince your opponent of anything that you're saying. Whether moderated or unmoderated, the latter tends to be the case online, etc. Debate is much in the same form, but the traditional style of debate as being two people generally moderated, discoursing with one another, two or more people on specific topics, yes, I would say that that kind of debate is dead because it's not as exciting. The grudge match, the chair throwing and the ripping out of hair and the harassing each other and shouting over one another digitally or otherwise draws more attention. And so, yes, to my mom's query, I would say that standard debate is effectively dead. But classical debate has never actually conformed to that standard to begin with. It never has. Look at what Diogenes and some of these others have said about other philosophers in ancient times. We're talking 2,000, 3,000 years ago. They were already doing the shitposting thing. Behold a man, says Diogenes, as he takes a plucked chicken and throws it on the stage, for example. Snuggy Jr. says clank. Big boy, long live Sticks. Honest jerk, I do declare, Sticks, this stump is my speech stump. I do declare. Yeah, Diogenes was an interesting man. Alexander the Great showing up, and he was living in a barrel at the time. Not Alexander, but Diogenes. And he was trying to converse with him, and Diogenes effectively said, "Get out of my fucking light." You're blocking the sunlight, bitch. Get out of my way. And he got away with it, too. Bad-mouthing Alexander the Great. Nick Ray, 47 on Rumble. First Rumble super chat from me. Am I the only one sick of the Trump v. DeSantis crap? Florida needs DeSantis and America needs Trump. I agree, and that's been my standard this whole time. I am Team Trump because I think he is more electable. I really do believe that. He's got the on-the-job experience. He's got a more hardened core, et cetera, et cetera. If DeSantis were to win the nomination, and he has not gotten in yet, and I didn't think that there were any shenanigans going on, I'd be perfectly fine with voting for DeSantis. Yes, I realize Laura Loomer doesn't like him. I realize there are certain problematic characteristics with his views. Isn't that the same for goddamn Donald Trump? One of the first things when he got elected was that I had to criticize him. I think it was a week later for mentioning that he wanted to reopen CIA black sites. So, I mean, of course, you're never going to find someone other than yourself in a political position that you agree with all of the time. I'm willing to deal with 2 out of 3 ain't bad with regards to politicians. And by the way, that's not cucking or anything like that. There is no party, platform, or individual that is always going to represent me. I am the only person that can do that. I'm a rugged individualist, you may have noticed. Biggest Dickus. Hey, Sticks, happy St. Paddy's Day. What do you think about the Russian Su-22 fighter pilots trolling the U.S. Reaper drone? It's a non-issue. Really, it's a complete non-starter. Again, it'll get bogged down in international law where the Russians say we duly informed everyone to stay out of the area. We were in active operation and nobody should have been penetrating the airspace. The US will insist that it's international airspace. The declaration is bullshit and that the Reaper drone had the right to be there. At the end of the day, it means nothing. And Lindsey Graham, by the way, and others coming out and saying, well, next time this happens, fire on the Russian aircraft. You do realize that the loss of a drone, an unmanned vehicle that has no person aboard, there's no human casualty, is not worth fighting World War III over. But Lindsey Graham is a war hawk. He is completely cucked by the demonic spirit of John McCain that possesses him like a meat puppet. BW, do you think this fighting between Trump and DeSantis is a stunt to make Dems think they don't have to try to beat Republicans? Is that too clever to hope? Unfortunately, I do think so. I think the Democrats do want to astroturf a DeSantis run, which is difficult for several reasons, but we can get into that separately in another video. They want that, though, because otherwise Trump is going to run roughshod over anyone that gets in. Nikki Haley stands no chance. Ramaswamy. Bolton is in a gray area where it appears that he's not actually running, but he did say he wanted to run. And I don't know what's happening with John Bolton at this point. Winston Fujimori, Mrs. Warwick. Styx was posting bad pictures in ghost politics in her circle. He posted a guy's member in a jar full of wasps. Yeah, I did. He posted a guy's butt full of needles. Please take away his video games. Yes, the ghost politics trolling, the most fun 20 minutes that I have had in years. It was great. Can't wait to do it again on someone else's Element Room. Mark Galvin. Happy Paddy's Day from Dublin, bro. Have you ever done any standalone occult vids in Ireland? That would be cool. No, I haven't, I think. Don't make me start singing John Lennon songs. Ryan Adams, could crypto become a political issue in 24? It's entirely possible. It would be part of a greater banking as an issue. Trump will probably bring that up. By the way, speaking of Trump, we should probably get into the first piece of news. So yes, thank you, Mom, for the debate note there. And be assured, I will make cottage pie when I am back. It's pretty good. I still put ketchup on it, even though technically it doesn't need it. It's heavily seasoned, but ketchup makes everything better. They're making ranch flavored ice cream now. So you will please forgive me if I just stick to my guns, say I fucking love ketchup. I'm not going to stop liking it. It's not just a kid-like phase. Some people are like, well, when you get older, your tastes get more sophisticated. Fuck that shit. I'm still going to the ketchup. Trump and the GOP attempt to reverse course on mail-in voting ahead of 2024. I have split feelings on this. This is effectively an attempt to take the Ring of Sauron and use it against Mordor. This is opening Pandora's box. There is no going back from this. If the GOP intends to engage in the mail-in ballots, legal ballot harvesting, etc. thing, Pressler's on board, Bannon's involved with this. They have been doing a lot of grassroots stuff, so they may very well be successful in this. And that would counterbalance the honk, totally fair and normal election rules in the wake of the lockdownerism that we saw in the past. It would be a huge counter to that. So we'll wait and see what happens. It means don't be demoralized for partisan purposes. That being said, my preference would be that the states go to universal voting ID. That is, you have to show some form of identification to get your ballot. There shouldn't be ballot harvesting by anyone but close family members, and then with witnesses willing to sign a legal paperwork saying that it is the person actually filled it out. There should not be a universal mail-in voting. It should be reserved for people who are abroad, military, diplomats, etc., potentially expats like myself, although, again, whatever. And for people who are totally crippled up, they can't even get out of bed. They're eligible to vote otherwise. There should only be a handful of circumstances in which mail-in ballots are used, and there should be tight constraints on ballot harvesting. But if one side is going to engage in those behaviors and the other side stubbornly resists it, that other side is permanently handicapped. The problem with this, again, is it's like using the Ring of Sauron against Mordor. It's Pandora's box, and it will forever change the election landscape in the United States, in my opinion, for the worse. I can, however, understand why Trump, who clearly wants to win, he's not running a joke campaign. He's already been fucking elected before when people thought that he was running one. I can understand why he would engage in that. I can understand why the GOP as well would want to engage in it also. So we'll see what happens. I have a feeling that Trump and his people will be highly successful at this. But once you let that genie out of the bottle, it ain't going back in. If the GOP is not willing to continue standing against the use of universal mail-in, of ballot harvesting, all of these other things that were incepted in a number of competitive states in the 2020 election, there is no going back. There's no methodology by which a party that won in part because of that would want to end that winning streak. There's no possibility, therefore, that the Trump administration will turn around after winning and say, okay, now it's over. Now we're going to press the issue and put the genie back in the bottle. It will not occur. That is an official prediction. And that's assuming, of course, that Trump wins. I think he has a damn good chance. He's got a better than 80% chance of being the nominee at this point. If he is nominee, considering the current economic landscape, it's going to be awfully difficult to even honk Biden back into office. I think that they'll throw him under the bus and try to get someone else in there if things truly fall flat. And you look at the banking stock right now, it's pretty much falling flat. Mungie, I struggle to see the DeSantis draw over Trump when DeSantis' best quality is that he is Trump light. Yeah, it's Trump minus the fun tweets. By the way, now that I've been enabled for community notes on Twitter, I've been correcting a whole shit ton of them. Some of them are on the docket. If anyone here happens to be on community notes, we need to work harder. I've been doing my best. I've been going through and very fairly, fairly unbiasedly, despite my actual personal bias, going through them as quickly as possible. But there is a goddamn hell of a backlog. And it's taking several days to actually fact check things, which means that fact checking is half useless, actually, currently on Twitter. I have already messaged their community notes staff suggesting that they expedite the process. Midwest Finest 95. As a former Democrat, I always associated Karens to conservatives. The future of U.S. politics could be in the hands of liberal Karens. Scary stuff. Well, look at Tipper Gore and the Housewives of America. A lot of them were Democrats back then. They're still Democrats now. Honest jerk. Graham loves war so much he gets off to 03 war footage while good Charlotte song the anthem plays. Yeah, I have a feeling that he can only get off to things that are a little bit more, a little bit beyond that, actually. And of course, his relationship with John McCain was a little bit unorthodox at times, a little bit chummy. He uses an awful lot of makeup, by the way, for an elderly gentleman. This ain't 1700s France. Killshot RC, good morning, Stick. Shout out from Memphis, Tennessee. That's about all. Peace out. And Steve sending an Australian dollar with no comment, thank you. Dennis the Menace, why is there a stereotype of aliens, little green men with bulbous heads and puny bodies? Is that humanity's future? That's mostly based on the ideas that aliens would be smarter so they'd have a bigger head, which, okay, what I will grant that. And that because their body is using more caloric intake, literally, to develop their mental capabilities, that their bodies wouldn't need to be so physically powerful. But I would note that some aliens are represented differently from that. The Grizzly. I agree with you on printable with mail-in ballots. It's just that the Pandora's box was opened by the left. There is no incentive for them to reverse course. I wish it wasn't the case, but I feel we've crossed that Rubicon. Yeah, I feel that same way. With Trump, the presumptive nominee, engaging in the same behavior. We're not screwed, but an element of our election system is screwed. Unless there is a massive civic uprising or a revolution or something in the future that completely overhauls the system, it probably doesn't go away. Apache, isn't the genie already out of the bottle with 2020? Well, some states have been trying to put it back in. A few of them have been in part successful. But again, in states where that's not the case, you're going to have to engage in that behavior. Enishi Kihaku, I never catch your lives because I'm third shift. Happy lucky day. I moved to Wisconsin from Illinois last month and it's been great so far. Excellent. Stephen Nizek, what is the likelihood that the Democrats try to eliminate ballot harvesting if Trump wins big enough? It would be very funny to see them hypocritically try, and some of them probably would. That's the irony, but it'd be doomed. It'd never happen. Doc Holliday, wouldn't you feel better in the U.S. with your guns? Oh, I feel just fine right here. Although I do like guns. And when I get back, I will be shooting up a storm. It's going to be some plinking time. Mr. Realistic, Memphis, Tennessee Clanker Stronghold. Memphis times 2 clankers. Yeah, I guess I'm popular in Memphis. Maybe I should start a band. Sigil Stone 17 on Rumble. Ballot harvesting is the one ring, but unfortunately the lazy asses in politics left no other choice. You don't do it, you'll never be elected. Exactly. It becomes a non-issue. Null hypothesis. Will Trump get indicted by New York City DA and be forced out of the race? Well, even an indictment wouldn't force him out of the race. He could just ignore it effectively. He doesn't live in New York. Morris Apple, clank. Sigil Stone 17 again. Speaking of Lord of the Rings references, though, have you seen the Wizards of the Coast blacked Aragorn in Magic the Gathering add-on? They're getting dragged like hell. I did see that. I found it very, very funny. Yes, Aragorn is an African-American individual now. Okay. I don't care because it's fictional canon, but yeah, it rankled people. Giga Mango Fanta, ever been tempted to put the cats outside because of their racket, or are you destined to be cucked by the kitties for the rest of your time in Europe? Yeah, I've always been cucked by kitties. There are cats in Rutland, there are cats here. They seem to be everywhere that you go. And, well, they love me. They love me a little bit too much, and they get awfully pushy sometimes. God, Quincy used to crawl all over me. Micah would jump up in my lap and, go to sleep and not let me move, get really grumpy if I tried to. Farah does the same thing. Yana's constantly up here. I just can't get, they just won't leave me alone. They think that I'm one of them. I was always raised with cats, and so I think that I have a natural connection to them where they think that I am a cat. Like I can, make, apparently some people can't make purring noises, which I don't understand. It's easy as fuck. And, I guess I just communicate with them. Wolf on the Plains. Sticks, do you think they would go so far as to start a war to postpone elections to hold power? To what extent? Can Dementia Joe declare without Congress? No, they've actually did put that genie partially back in the bottle. And I don't think that they would do that because what you do is you honk the election. You get 2 controlled opposition candidates, you don't care who wins, like Obama v. Romney, Obama v. McCain, Kerry v. Bush, etc. It doesn't matter who wins. They're both part of the uniparty. If Trump gets back in, there will be shenanigans. They will attempt to stop him. They're already trying to stop him from getting the nomination. It so far is not working very well, which means there will be honking in the general, which is why Trump is doing outreach for ballot harvesting. William Sova. Hello, Sticks. First time super chat for you. Have you ever checked out the mythology and paintings of English poet William Blake? No, but I have seen him actually mentioned in several works that I've edited. Zeranx. The fact that we continue to be dominated by the behavior of the left bothers me. It shows that reason doesn't lead but capitulates. Many such cases. Yeah, exactly. Gigamega Fanta. How much honk honk can the Dems honk? Honk. Could the Dems honk? Would honk could. Matthew Wasaki. Any footage of Biden doing the Super Bowl shuffle exiting Air Force One? I'm not sure that that particular viral picture is actually real. I'm thinking that it might be AI related or Photoshop in some way. I asked people for video footage that has that still, and I haven't gotten any. So my assumption is it's not actually true. Honest Jerk. Sticks, have you ever watched the AI presidents on YouTube? Also Clank from the Alamo City of the Lone Star State. Yeah, I think I did actually. They're like the one where they're playing like Minecraft or some shit like that. Bill Z750. Sticks, how much will the farmer citizens movements win in the Dutch provincial elections help the farmers keep their land? That remains to be seen. Mark Rutte's coalition could just decide to side with Green Links and go full lefty, in which case the situation gets far worse for the farmers because they will expect concessions, or they could back down. It doesn't appear they intend to back down, so I think that the Farmers' Party will grow. Because what will happen is over the next couple of years, they'll abuse the farmers worse. They'll make the problem worse. The old center tends to do this. They did it in Nazi Germany. It didn't work out so well, did it? John DeSlot, how about an occult video on modern occultists that are actually legit? Oh, a video about myself? Yeah, I can do that sometime. I'm semi-joking. Sigil Stone 17. I had a dog named Kitty. When newborn, she mewed like a kitten, and she could roll R's. Does that count as being a dog or cat person? Well, it's a dog, so a dog person with cat-like tendencies. Next news story, speaking of political upheaval, live updates. Macron will push pension reform bill through without vote. Yes, the other day, Emmanuel Macron designated himself temporary dictator in order to push through pension reform, and that is a loosely used term. France normally has maintained its pension age at 62, which is kind of young. They've raised it to 64. But he didn't decide to go through the normal legislative process to cause this to happen. He said, no, it's too important. The pension system will fail outright if we don't do this. So I'm not going to consult you. I'm going to act unilaterally. Fuck you. I'm going to get the prime minister to sign off on this, and it becomes law automatically. He was then faced with a parliament that was really, really mad, including some members of his own bloc who probably thought it could pass on its own, singing the national anthem, and subsequently a shit ton of riots, which continue as we speak right now. I'd be surprised if there aren't burning piles of trash in the streets. The municipal workers threatened to strike and were threatened with jail time if they didn't do their job cleaning the debris, which means that they should all go on strike and refuse because they literally cannot arrest you all. This should be the end of Emmanuel Macron's presidency. The people of France should not tolerate this. It is autocracy. You're fucking France. Your national anthem has a line about watering the furrows of your field with the blood of your enemies, and then fucking beheading people and shit like that is like a national sport there. Get more angry about this than you do the average soccer match. Oh, wait, European football, and do something about this. Just like the Dutch people are doing with the tractor protests, which have led to a genuine political movement of great significance. Don't even go yellow vest mode. Be beyond that. I would advise the French people to effectively force the government to resign. By what methodology they do that, hopefully it's bloodless and nonviolent. But simply don't go to work, refuse to stand down, don't empty the streets, don't clean up the goddamn trash piles, surround the fucker and force him to resign. Because at this point, he's clearly gone too far. If you deal with this, you're going to have to deal with more in the future. If you deal with abuse from a government up to a limit, eventually it goes further than that limit because the government feels able to do so. This is the case with individuals, not just with groups. If you put up with shit from the bully, they will keep bullying you. If you pound them in the face a few times, sometimes they will leave you alone because you're not Slim Pickens. You're not an easy target anymore. They're going to go to somebody who might not knock them out. And so that's what you do with bullies. You punch them in the goddamn face. That's what you do. Macron is an authoritarian. Jesus, when you people first elected him, what was one of the first things he did? He compared himself to Jupiter. He has a massive ego problem. He is an autocrat. He doesn't believe in... I like how a lot of people in Europe are like, well, we must defend democracy, do more for Ukraine. But at the same time, you're willing to deal with this shit? That's a crazy idea. So Macron should be out, and the hope is that he gets forced out. Whether that happens or not, depends on how many people decide to protest. Let's see. Not a banned account. Are succubi sexy and fun to be around in real life? Well, I mean, one time when I was high on salvia, I did have sex with a demoness. Yeah, in the literal sense. It was a hallucination, but it definitely felt real. I will say, salvia is one hell of a fucking drug. The Spencer, slingshot guns for your country. Shork Sprav on YouTube for the win. Most people won't be able to actually pronounce that enough to spell it. So I will put that up there briefly. DaddyTube, is TikTok exposing the ridiculousness of American women? No, it's exposing the lemming-like nature of American citizens and others in the world in general. I would point out that most of the cringe shit on TikTok is basically similar to the cringe shit that a lot of us made on YouTube back in the 2000s. So I'm not maybe so worried, other than the data tracking and stuff. I'm not as worried as some people that are on the right, which I'm not, so that probably explains it. Honest Jerk, burning pile of baguettes. Doc Holliday, how many Frenchmen does it take to defend Paris? No one knows. It's never been done. Yeah, exactly. Macron's a Frenchman, so, you know, a bunch of other people should just get together and bully him out of office. Gigamango Fanta, can we just call democracy what it is basically is now in the modern sense, that being soft socialism or cucked communism? It can be. Next news story. The new great game, Joel Kotkin and Hugo Kruger. The US and Europe are the new sick men of the world. Now, this is a reference to the Ottoman Empire. The sick man of Europe concept was, hey, you've got this formerly really great power, but they've fallen behind in basically every way, diplomatically, technologically. Well, they rule a huge area of land. They're not governing it quite as well as they used to. They're a failing, ailing power. The idea of this article is partially questioning in nature, is that the US and Western Europe are the new sick man of the world, as opposed to the sick man of Europe that you had in the World War I era, effectively. I would argue yes and no. I would argue that Western Europe especially has systemic issues with stability, but this is something that, in my opinion, the United States managed to narrowly avoid by electing Donald Trump. I pointed it out at the time. Donald Trump represents a mild populistic reform that's capable of supplanting the old center in a way that doesn't destabilize things. That is, there is overlap, but there are also things that are different about it. What you don't want is a situation where attempts, and I would argue that the UK also falls under this umbrella because of Brexit. If you resist that reform successfully, so the old establishment continues meandering on and mumbling its way through in power, people get more and more pissed. You end up with the left and the right, generally speaking, although it can be religious infighting too, feeding off of each other. So a movement that once was center-left and proposed what would be considered relatively mundane reforms becomes more socialistic. If continued to be denied, they become more communistic, and they keep going from there. The right wing, a populist movement denied, becomes a reactionary movement. The reactionary movement that is denied becomes an outright extreme movement. They move further apart from one another, differentiating themselves, and they do this necessarily because they are feeding off of one another's growth. This is exactly what happened in Weimar Germany. The Nazis and the communists didn't rise to prominence in a vacuum. It was because the old center was incapable of governing. They weren't doing the things that needed to be done to stabilize the country. When the times briefly there under the Weimar were relatively stable, what happened? Communism and Nazism almost disappeared. Their membership levels dropped like a rock. As soon as the problems came back, of course, those individuals harangued, and all you need is one charismatic individual or group, or one particular idea that happens to take hold, and the idea goes forth. In the United States, I would say we're not the sick man of the world. We're less than 100 years into a presumptive 200-year empirical period. That's partially because we've managed to stabilize under a populist system, a quasi-populism. We have improved things. There's more work to be done, and really we're all eyes on the current election to see whether that progress continues. The UK with Brexit did the same thing fundamentally, although they are still having political upheaval because there were issues other than EU membership. Right now, what I see, for example, in France, is the rise, again, of an autocratic, not charismatic, but autocratic, almost dictatorial figure within the old center, as a counterbalance to movements that are growing up around him. Mélenchon in the left, certainly the Front National, the so-called right, although economically they're still lefties, in France. Here in the Netherlands, a party that effectively represents a sparse platform and is centered around the idea of tractor protests just became the largest party in the Senate in the Netherlands. This process in Western Europe will continue. I warned about it for years, even before Brexit happened. What I warned about, my prediction, has come out entirely correct. It will continue. The hope is that these systems embrace what is effectively mild reform, be willing to change, but don't rock the boat so much that it tips over and you goddamn sink with it. The United States successfully is going through that transition, at least at the moment. We'll wait and see. The UK, in part, has done the same. We will see what happens in Europe. It could implode NATO. It could implode the European Union entirely because the situation could spiral out of control in multiple countries. It will then inevitably, by the way, get blamed on Russia and propaganda from the Eastern Bloc if that happens. Just like they blamed propaganda from the Western world when the Soviet Union collapsed, even though it was largely their own fault. They will do exactly the same thing. By the way, if that happens, some people will be happy to say, oh, ha, ha, the imperialistic West is hemorrhaging support. Yeah, asshole, that'll be really fun. We'll return to a Cold War stance. And China will suddenly begin guaranteeing trade lanes. That's really going to make your costs a lot lower now, isn't it? I don't think that you should be so flippant about it after all, but there are people out there that understand absolutely nothing about geostrategy whatsoever. Let's see here. Enishi Kihaku, have you read Thomas Sowell's work? Any timeline for your return to the USA? I want to see you debate Tim on the 2020 honkening. He softballs it. I would love to talk to Tim on his show, and many others, by the way, back in the United States. I have no timeline, though. Right now, I'm working on getting a driver's license so that I can zoom in 2 continents. Not that my car back in the United States right now is capable of zooming. At the very least, it needs an oil change, 4 new tires, new insurance, and half a dozen other things. No, I have only read a very small amount of Sowell's work, actually. I should probably rectify the situation. Drew Albane sent a DM of a history video you might like. Tick history. Interesting. Jonathan L. Why can't we let the system collapse? Beheading used to be a thing and would end feminism. No, I don't think that it would. I think that would be counterproductive. And I generally oppose violence except in the use of self-defense, so I'm not in favor of beheading people. If you want to get rid of your elected leaders and you hate them that much, send them to Madagascar so they can go get plagued from the rats there. Eric writes, regarding raising the retirement age, which is the stated purpose for rioting in France, it's sort of unavoidable that we'll have to do the same here, assuming we can make Social Security work at all. Social Security, just make it voluntary. You pay in, you draw out, don't fuck with it. And that's it. Call it a day. I would opt out. I don't want to pay the government more money than I'm probably never going to get back anyway. Gigamega Fanta, when it comes to the foreign policy stage, what must America, presumably under Trump, do to ensure its economic and political power is maintained, if not grown? Must what they avoid, reject, or outright counter to succeed? Globalism needs to be tempered. Although global trade is a wonderful thing and global cooperation can be helpful, globalism in and of itself, in a nutshell, should go the way of the dinosaur. That's number one. And it has to be more than the U.S. doing that. Otherwise, you end up with a Eurosphere that's separate from the rest of the West, which is already partially happening. That's number one. Number two, countering China, not in an aggressive manner, but just making sure that the balance sheets are equitable between the two spheres. That would make sense. Trump began that. Biden has effectively ended that. And number three, instead of world policing all the time, why don't we build more infrastructure, et cetera, in our country to improve our socioeconomic and diplomatic conditions and our internal stability so that we have the ability to use force projection if we really need it, instead of hauling off and doing stupid shit like Bush-Bama did and like Biden is doing now. Big boy, to your Weimar analogy, I think Donald Trump and MAGA are nothing more than a minor speed bump on America's road to an authoritarian future. Well, that's black pillory, and I don't endorse it. Winston Fujimori, I like Terry Baudet. I agree with him on everything, but I'm told the way he conducts himself is very alienating, whereas Wilders, despite being an Islamocritical, is more diplomatic. Is this true? That seems to be, that seems to be the case, according to my opinion, and the opinion of some others that I've talked to here in the Netherlands. Tyler S., I think the U.S. will be fine. I oppose Biden, but there are elements of populism that remain. Trump has made a shift. Politics are slowly catching up. Exactly. That's why I'm not black-pilled. The progress has already begun. Mungi, what are your thoughts on horseshoe theory? What does it get right and wrong? I think horseshoe theory it's useful as a metric of looking at politics, but I prefer cone theory. That is, at one point you have total anarchism and then various forms of authoritarianism branch out from there. They are co-equal. They can be more or less authoritarian. Somewhere in the middle, you get a stable, classically liberal system. I made a video on it. You can look it up. I think I literally called it cone theory. You can look on my channel and I explain it there. Drew Albane, the video is on how Nazism is socialistic. Yeah, they were literally National Socialists. Socialists, but they were doing it in the name of one civic construct, one tribal sort of people. The Grizzly, what do you think the Democrats do if Trump wins a squeaker election and brags about his ballot harvesting campaign as a key reason why he won? They will eat crow. I don't think there's a whole lot they'll be able to do. Sigilstone 17. By the way, please send no more super chats. I know that I've still got a while to go, but I've still got 4 more news stories to go, and I'm overrun here. So please don't send any more super chats. I do appreciate the money. I also appreciate cooking cottage pie. I've got to get to that in a little bit. Sigil Stone 17, seeing bastards like Macron and Trudeau remain in power no matter what they do makes me side-eye this democracy business. Yeah, well, look at Canada's voting system and you'll see why Trudeau is in power. Their system is not anything remotely representative in nature. Hero Return of the Humans, support Styx and other creators on Rumble. Yes, thank you very much. Almost 2,000 people watching live. Sigil Stone 17. The US is the sick man only if you're chugging Chinese propaganda. Yeah, there's a lot of that too. There's a lot of Chi-Com propaganda, especially online, and especially with TikTok. What a coincidence. And a follow-up, collapse NATO and the European Union. Come on, Styx, don't make us hard if you're not going to finish us off. Over on YouTube again, Joe, I'm concerned about a total dollar collapse. I had a dream about it last night. Also, that I got tetanus from a fort at a club. What do you think? A fort at a club? You mean like a hooker or something? Is that some sort of slang term? I'm not sure. I don't think that the dollar is going to collapse. People, including people that I respect, have been predicting that for decades now. That's not what I think will end up happening. I think we're going through a struggle session economically right now from which we may emerge more powerful if we manage things properly, but we don't have the people in power right now to do that. That's the whole problem. We've got a weak, well, not even a leader. We got a steward. We have weakness in the Senate. We have weakness in the House. We have a Republican Party that are, a lot of them are cucks, and a Democratic Party that's flat out malevolent towards the American way of life. And that's just the way things are, and we need to change that through civics, through exempting yourself as much as possible from the system by doing things yourself whenever you can. Giga Mango Fanta, thoughts on AI-generated art and media. A lot of soy pods and panicked blackpilling about how leftoid artist prawn types be reeing with what seems like Ludditism. Is it unfounded or is such justified with the exponential tech rise? I cannot tell you how AI will affect the world in the next 5 years, but I can tell you it will be a massive impact. I'll put it that way. It'll probably, like the internet, it'll probably be partially positive, partially negative. Authoritarians will seek to misuse it. Entrepreneurs will capitalize upon it. People with the right skills in the right frame of mind at the right place in the right time will make a shit ton of money. And people in retrospect will say, shit, why didn't I think of that? It'll be the same as the internet. It'll be the same as the rise of any other major transformative technology. Probably less than the internet as a whole, but it will be meaningful. I'm not going to go Paul Krugman on you and say, well, it won't have any more impact than the fax machine. No, I don't think that's the case. John Andrew, don't tell me what to do. How dare you? Clank. Again, I appreciate the money, but I appreciate food as well. Next news story, we'll gloss over these quick. Biden inflation rises to 14.4%, hurting Americans. Yes, core inflation is actually stubbornly high right now. Inflation overall has gone more or less linear in the US and in the EU. Eurozone inflation ticking down 0.1. That was a news story the other day. It's linear. Because it's a year over year as opposed to month over month metric, it hasn't gone anywhere. It's still there, but at least it's not getting worse. The problem is that core inflation is getting worse. So if you don't need to eat and you don't need housing, things are slightly improving over time. If you would prefer not to live in a tent and eat dirt, living like you're in North Korea or some other commie regime, yeah, things are still getting worse, actually, at the moment. There's a delayed response, it appears, with Biden's sticky inflation. So we'll keep that one short. Next news story, Poland to transfer 4 MiG-29 fighter jets to Ukraine in coming days. President says, yes, the first country to send air power to Ukraine becomes Poland. Now, Polish do not really like the Russians. And while I'm not gung-ho about arming the Ukrainians, can I please make one point that is sort of it really is a mitigating factor here. If I was Polish, I would fucking hate the Russians too. I'm just going to come out and say it. Look at what happened behind the Iron Curtain to the Polish people, and you can probably understand why. By the way, when your country happens to be ignominiously located between Russia and Germany, who have a tendency to pop off every, half century or so, you can understand why you would take up a real goddamn defensive posture when one of them acts up. I almost think that Poland's taking the 4 because they're worried that Germany will do so if they don't. I honestly think that the Polish government secretly worries about Germany and its rearmament plans right now. That being said, 4 MiG fighters is not going to do a huge amount of difference. It is almost symbolical. Although they do intend, I believe, to send others. These are 90s era aircraft, I believe. These aren't modern aircraft. They're helpful. You can run some sorties, do some recon or whatever. The Russian Air Force is a little bit larger than 4 planes. Ukraine's biggest advantage at this point is partisan fighting on their own territory. That's the big advantage. That's how they're grinding Russia down. I oppose war, so at the same time that I oppose Russia invading Ukraine, and I do, I condemn that, I also oppose further U.S. involvement in Ukraine by and large, at least in terms of lethal aid, as well as massive handouts when we are insolvent. And we're teetering on the brink of a major recession or a banking collapse or something. We're giving significant amounts of money to Ukraine, enough to literally run a smaller, like a third world country for its entire budgetary year. So I'm, oh, by the way, tied into this, you had DeSantis, not in the docket, but I'll cover it briefly anyway. Did you see what they were saying about Ron DeSantis? Well, he's decided to become a Russia firster. They said the same thing in the same 24-hour period about Trump. I had to correct them on community notes. We'll see if any of those actually go through because the system's a little wonky. Next news story. I already covered this morning, so again, I'll keep this one brief. According to Julito77, this is an MSNBC opinion piece. White Latinos need to stop equating their experiences with those of Black and Indigenous Latinos. I've already talked about the myth of indigenousness in a separate video. I brought it up today when I was covering this in my one-off, but I won't go into that further. That's easily debunked. The concept is basically nothing more than Marxist newspeak when you really think about it. It's not exactly the oldest term in the world. I'm just saying, not as it's usually applied. The concept is that a person of Hispanic origin, if they have lighter skin, then they're not subject to the same troubles as someone who's Hispanic and of a different group. Now, on the surface, of course, there are white Hispanics, there are Black Hispanics, Hispanic not being a race at all. I find it funny, though, that this is coming from the same people that want to create the classification of BIPOC to similarly insinuate that a person who is from Indonesia is the same as somebody from the middle of the Amazon. So you want to lump them together, but you want to parse white Hispanics out of Hispanic dumb. Well, why the double standard? If the BIPOC thing is, so you're only caring about skin tone. What naked racism can MSNBC possibly conjure that would go beyond this? It literally is. Smudge. No, there are definitely indigenous Hispanics. What the fuck are you talking about? The Hispanic world spawns in Europe, actually, in Spain and Portugal. So no, there are no indigenous Hispanics in the Americas. In fact, there is no indigenous person in the Americas because the United States and Canada and all of these other countries is not where humankind began. What I'm pointing out with the indigenous mythology is that the fact that your ancestor walked across the Bering Land Bridge a little earlier and somebody else's ancestor sailed over on a fucking boat sometime in the 1200s or something doesn't mean dick. Most of the land area of the Americas was effectively uninhabited by anyone that built a standing structure or led any form of settled lifestyle until the colonial period. There were exceptions, the mound builders, which were defunct before any colonials got here, and the Mayans and other groups. Of course, they existed, but they were sporadic. Most people lived a hunter-gatherer or semi-nomadic pastoral lifestyle in the entirety of the North and South American continents before the colonial period. So they hadn't settled the land. They moved from place to place. They followed herds and shit. They didn't have a concept of direct ownership because there was nothing to own other than their spear or their bow. Because they had not settled the land, there's no claim to it. The few organized tribes that were parlayed with, yeah, they got reservations. Now they're worse off than before. So yeah, there are no indigenous people in the North or South American continents. Everyone should be treated the same in the New World. It's not like Europe where you go back 50,000 years and you find some primordial tribe that eventually became Lithuanians or something like that. It's not the same. It's apples to oranges comparing Eurasia and Africa with the rest of the world. That's why they call it the Old and New World. There's a reason for that. I mean, I have supposedly I have one ancestor that was Abenaki, like on 1/16th or something. But the fact that that ancestry goes back to the Bering Land Bridge doesn't nullify all the other ancestors that came over on boats hundreds of years ago. Who gives a fucking shit? Anyway, we'll get past that. And the final news story, SVB, that's Silicon Valley Bank, gave $74 million to Black Lives Matter. That's half true. I'll explain. Explains a lot about the bank's collapse. Yes, this is being used as a right-wing line with regards to banking and ESG overlapped onto this. First, I will fact-check this. SVB did not give 74 million big ones to Black Lives Matter. It gave or pledged 74 million in total to groups associated with Black Lives Matter as part of their ESG sort of thing. That being said, while that part is not directly true, it does point to a larger problem, not just within banking, but corporations in general. Wokeness. Yes, it is a problem. By the way, when you see all the liberals right now flipping out about the use of the term woke, there's a reason for that. It's because the hits are hitting home. What has happened is that they're worried because they realize that people are turning on their Marxist bullshit because it doesn't work. I would point out, though, that Silicon Valley Bank did not tank just because of that. Yes, it's not helpful to expend tens of millions of dollars on Fruit Loop horseshit that sounds like some throwaway course at a goddamn community college. That's true. It's not the only reason, though, that they sunk. So I rate this half true. It did happen. Although it wasn't just to BLM, there was two other groups too. There were the groups that support like LGBT, groups that support like third wave feminism. Obviously not TERF, trans exclusionary in nature, but it is fundamentally half true. I will put it that way. Wouldn't you like to know on Rumble? Thanks, Sticks. Keep telling the truth. Thank you for the $50, my man or woman. I have no clue because your avatar is Bugs Bunny. Sigilstone 17, ever about the worried Indians? They had reservations. No, I get the joke. But yeah, I think I'm going to go offline now because as soon as Liz is back from the store, I'm going to go wombling out, get some burger meat, and it's going to be time for cottage pie. Yes, I will put a lot of ketchup on it, and I don't give a fucking shit if somebody ridicules me for that. I will always do that. I didn't grow out of it. It's not just a phase, Mom. I really do just love ketchup. That's about all.